Hey, how's it going? This is Todd with PremiumBeat, and today we're going to take a look at some new anamorphic lenses. So what we have here are the Atlas Orion anamorphic lenses. Now, I've been pretty obsessed with these things since they were announced, and Atlas was kind enough to send a set for me to check out for myself, so I was pretty stoked. Now, these lenses will have a swappable EF to PL mount system available in the near future, but the set that I have right here were PL mount. So luckily our friends at ShareGrid hooked us up with F22 Studios, a rental house in North Hollywood, and they were kind enough to let us borrow their Panasonic EVO 1 to review. Now, if you don't know what ShareGrid is, it's a really awesome filmmaker to filmmaker kind of gear renting site that you can use to rent your gear out to other filmmakers. So a big thanks to F22 Studios and ShareGrid for hooking us up with this camera. This is my friend Leon Carlo. He's an extremely talented musician. If you want to check him out, I'll put a link in the description. I called him up and we threw together a really quick and dirty kind of 2-location live performance music video style shoot. And if you don't know what anamorphic is, there are a whole lot of different videos online that you can check out about it. But long story short, it's a type of lens that squeezes the image optically when you're recording, and then in post, you stretch it back out. And this does a whole lot of interesting things to your image. It gives you a much wider field of view. You get really interesting lens flares. You get this classic kind of oval-shaped bokeh. But overall, you just get a really beautiful look with a lot of character. And that character in our minds is kind of associated with a cinematic quality just because of how many of our favorite movies have been shot this way. Now, I've shot a really modest amount of anamorphic stuff, but I've never been able to do it legitimately with a real anamorphic lens. For years, I used an anamorphic adapter, which is basically where you take an old anamorphic projector lens and you screw it or clamp it onto your taking lens. But to me, the limitations just outweigh the results. So why not always just use a real anamorphic lens? Generally speaking, the price of one anamorphic lens can be usually something around $50,000 or more dollars. And for me, that's where Atlas comes in. I'm a big fan of any company that is working to kind of democratize film gear and make it more available to all of us. So this right here, this is the Atlas Orion 40mm lens. This lens will run you $8,000. Now, while that might still sound like quite a bit of money, the RE Master anamorphic version of the exact same focal length costs $41,000. So each of these lenses are a good bit less than a quarter of the price of the RE Master anamorphic lenses. And as someone who sits and watches hours and hours and hours of lens comparisons and lens test videos, I have to say I like the character and the quality of these lenses more than their much more expensive counterparts. These things have extremely smooth focus rings, iris rings. They are built like tanks. These things are super well made. So again, quality lenses at a much less price than their competitor. Now, if you're gonna shoot anamorphic, there are some numbers that you need to pay attention to. Every anamorphic lens has a specific squeeze factor. Some examples of these numbers are 1.33, 1.5, and 2 in the case of the Atlas anamorphics. This number refers to the amount that the image is squeezed. And 2x anamorphic lenses like the Atlas lenses were created to shoot on a 4:3 aspect ratio. With that aspect ratio, you'll get the more classic anamorphic 2:35 or 2:39:1 aspect ratio. However, if the camera you're shooting with doesn't have the 4:3 option and you end up shooting the standard 16:9, you're going to end up with an aspect ratio of 3:55:1, which is obviously extremely wide and in a lot of cases a little bit too wide. So in the case of the EVO 1, there was no 4:3 mode that I could find, so we ended up shooting the 16:9 aspect ratio and got this extremely wide aspect ratio. But luckily everything we shot was in 4K, so we're able to crop in a little bit and get a little bit more of a reasonable aspect ratio. Overall, these lenses were a blast to use. The overall look of them are really beautiful, and the character is really controllable. Some anamorphic lenses are a little bit hard to control, and there's almost a little bit too much anamorphic character. To me, these lenses really hit the sweet spot of kind of the best of all worlds. The flares are really nice. They're a nice blue color, but not an overly saturated kind of sci-fi look like you get with a lot of anamorphic lenses. I really never noticed any intense kind of barrel distortion or anything like that, and these lenses seem pretty sharp edge to edge, whereas most anamorphic lenses, you kind of get a little bit more softness on the edges. But even though anamorphic lenses are still relatively expensive, for lower budget filmmakers, these more affordable anamorphic lenses that are coming out is kind of starting a new era of anamorphic lenses being more available in more areas. I'm in the Dallas market, and it wasn't until even like maybe 3 or 4 years ago that most of the rental houses around here even had a set of anamorphic lenses to use. I also really enjoyed shooting with the EVA 1. It's a great new camera. I really enjoyed the dual native ISO capabilities. It was really great in some of the low light moments of the shoot, and perhaps later on I'll get a chance to do a full-on video review. So start saving up, try and buy yourself an anamorphic lens or two. I hope that all of you get a chance to try out both of these pieces of gear. I'm a big fan of both of them. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.